Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Tuesday, September 12, 2023. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. 5 cops accused of the murder of Tyre Nichols. They have been hit with federal civil rights charges. We'll break it down for you. Jim Trotter, a former reporter for the NFL Network, has slapped the NFL with a 53-page lawsuit alleging rampant discrimination at the network and its TV network. We'll break all that down for you as well. Also, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has told his Republican-led committees to begin an inquiry into impeaching President Joe Biden. Big contradiction when Speaker Nancy Pelosi was leading an impeachment against Donald Trump. We'll talk about how they are simply targeting Biden because they're pissed off because Trump got impeached twice. Also, on today's show, Republican Florida state attorneys are calling out Ron DeSantis for trying to prevent 2 Democrat state attorneys, including a black woman, from running again. Also, and Monique Worrell is going to be joining us to talk about that. She's one of those folks affected. Also, Beverly Hill, California, faced with a $500 million lawsuit for attorney Ben Crump for constantly arresting black folks, but them not having charges actually filed against them. That more right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. It's time to bring the funk. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky.
grand jury has indicted the 5 cops accused of the death of Tyre Nichols. Those former cops in Memphis, of course. We saw the devastating video of that vicious beating. The Department of Justice's indictment mirrors the state charges that these officers face. Kristen Clark, the Assistant Attorney General of the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, she laid the charges out, but we're going to play that in a second. Right now, there's a news conference taking place. In Memphis as we speak. Go to my iPad, please.
Of Tyre Nichols. Present with us today is his mother and father, Roland and Rodney Wells, who will express themselves momentarily on such a monumental day for justice. We were notified this morning, mid-morning, by the head of the Civil Rights Division, Kristen Clark, that the grand jury had ratified the charges, the federal charges, against the 5 police officers that have been charged with murder on the state level. She notified us that they had been charged with the federal charges of excessive force, as well as conspiracy and witness tampering and deliberate indifference. 4 charges that could sentence them to life and beyond possibly. And we just want to pause to say thank you to the grand jury for affirming what we already know in our hearts, that these police officers brutally killed Tyre Nichols, and it was unjustified, it was unnecessary, and it was unconstitutional. The grand jury affirmed that for us today here in Memphis, Tennessee. And we're so grateful for all of them doing their civic duties. We are equally grateful to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who Judge Doris, I believe, is one of the most effective attorney generals in the history of civil rights in America, if not the most effective. I put his administration on the same level with Robert Kennedy. When you think about what him and civil rights head at the Department of Justice, Kristen Clark, who is the embodiment of what a civil rights director should be, always fighting for equal justice and due process and fairness. When you think about what they have done in their administration and trying to demonstrate that it's about equal justice for all citizens, they charged the officers who killed George Floyd with federal charges. They charged and got convictions. They charged the quasi-retired law enforcement father who killed Ahmaud Arbery for jacking while black and got convictions. And they made history by charging the officers who killed Breonna Taylor. And as we understand, it's the first time in the history that there have been federal charges against police officers for killing a black woman in the United States of America. So we are very thankful to Attorney General Garland and his entire Department of Justice, and especially on behalf of Roland Wells and Rodney Wells and the family of Tyre Nichols today. And the last thing I will say, before you hear from Tyre's mother and father, is that it is our hope where not only the charges that were brought against these 5 officers, but and Father, is that it is our hope where not only the charges that were brought against these 5 officers, but also with the pattern and practice investigation, that we can see a change in the policing here in Memphis, Tennessee, because we know Tyre was not the only young black man killed unnecessarily and unjustifiably here in Memphis. And so they are looking at the entire department to hopefully prevent any more of our loved ones being killed unjustly. Aren't y'all tired of seeing our young black men killed unjustly in Memphis and other cities around the world? I mean, how many more videos do we have to see? So if anything, we are so hopeful that today will send a chilling effect on police officers across America, that not only are you going to be under review by the state, but Merrick Garland and the Biden administration have sent the warning and set a precedent that the federal government is going to defend the civil rights for all American citizens against anybody, whether they're wearing a badge or not. It's about equal justice. And so we're very thankful to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland and Christian Clark, and the grand jury. We have renewed hope today for Tyre to get justice and for so many others across America. At this time, you hear from a lady who has always believed in her heart that something good was going to happen from this tragedy. And this is but another step towards that justice, and more importantly, something good happening from this tragedy. She was recognized by so many people, deservingly so, because she has inspired us all. Ms. Rovan Wells and Mr. Rodney Wells, the parents of Tyre Nichols.
Good evening. We'd just like to say that on behalf of my family and I, we'd like to thank everyone that was involved in the indictment of those police officers today. It was a surprise to us that it happened so quickly, but we're very thankful that it did. Amen. As I've mentioned before, you know, Ty, he was just a free spirit, and he really should be here today. Tyre shouldn't be gone. He should be here today. And because of those 5 police officers, he's not. This is something that I'm gonna have to deal with for the rest of my life, that I will not have my son. But if my son had to leave this earth in this manner, I'm hoping it was for the greater good.
Amen.
Because at the end of the day, again, Tyre should still be here. Again, I want to thank everyone, the Assistant Attorney General, the Attorney General, and the people here in Tennessee for working so diligently to get those charges put upon those 5 officers. And all I have to say is thank you. Thank you.
Amen. Mr. Wells?
Thank everybody for coming out. Everything my wife said again was right on point. We need to thank everybody for their diligence, their due diligence, their hard work. I know if the feds picked up this case, that they're going to go to the nth degree to make sure that justice is done for Tyre. And that's what this family wants, is justice for Tyre.
Yes.
So we're very, very proud. This is a very, very good day for the Wells family. For justice and for all our siblings. You know, they're ecstatic about this. So our extended family is ecstatic about this. This is a long time coming, and we're so glad that we've reached this point. Now, the next milestone is the actual convictions.
Amen. Yeah. Justice for Tyre. 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 Justice for Tyre.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, that's you.
No.
It's your day? Okay. Thank you, Attorney Mendelson and Wachtel and Judge Doris. It's a team effort, and certainly Attorney Antonio Ramanucci, who wanted to be here, couldn't be here because he's teaching class at the University of Chicago Law School today. And to Kareem Ali and all the activists. This day would not be possible with those young people saying that Tyre Nichols' death will not be in vain. So thank you for that. At this time, we will answer your questions, and I would announce that Roland Wells are going to join some of the other mothers of the movement. This recent addition, unfortunately, it keeps adding to that fraternity. It's a sorority that no parent wants to be involved, but she's going to join Ronald Green's mother, who was killed in Louisiana, and also Eric Garner's mother, Gwen Carr, who was killed in New York, as well as Terrence Crutcher's twin sister, who was killed in Tulsa, Oklahoma, all by police officers on video. And they're going to join Senator Cory Booker and Congressman Steve Hosford, head of the Congressional Black Caucus, next week on September 20th to have an update on the efforts to pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, because as Roland has said continuously, that there has to be a greater good that comes from this tragedy. And so she will help lead the mothers of the movement and providing testimony before the congressional delegation and the Senate. Right now we'll open it up for questions.
Tyre being up 2 officers at a time. What is it like just to hear those type of allegations against his character?
You know, it has to be just deflating for his mother and father and his family, but more importantly, the people who knew Tyre, who knew the kind of person he was, that he was a free spirit, that, as his mother said, that he was a good person. And I think about the diversity. That's what we talked to Christian Clark about. And Ms. Roland, you may want to tell them a little bit about that and ask your question again. It may be just as important for Ms. Roland to answer that question if you asked it again, because she told Christian Clark about his friends, his Starbucks crowd, and then his skateboarding crowd, and then his photography crowd, and then his FedEx crew. I mean, he has such a diverse group of people who loved him. So repeat that question for her.
Ms. Wells, I was reading the overacts in the indictment, and I just wanted to know how you felt about the allegations against Tyre's character coming from the officers.
Well, when this all happened, a lot of things were being said about my son, all kind of bad, negative things, and his siblings were calling me every day. Mama, they're saying this about Ty, they're saying that about Ty, they're saying he's sleeping with this person, that person. Well, none of it was true. And being his mother and knowing my son, it was a very hurtful thing to hear all that, but I also told my children that his good would overshadow all the bad, and it has.
Amen.
So I'm okay.
And I would say she also told General Christian Clark about he battled Crohn's disease, and yes. Tyre was not very big at all, and just why they had to do this to her son who, you know, was so close to home. And then, Kareem, you remember his brother, Michael. Yes. He said something I thought was kind of thought-provoking. He said, man, Tyre wasn't that kind of dude. He wasn't that kind of guy. He said, he even said himself, he said, you know, I know the community. I've been in the hood and so forth, but not my brother. He was like, he wasn't that type of guy. Not that it should happen to any of us. But he said for this to happen to Tyre was wrong on so many levels. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
ABC 24. Do you feel like the federal charges are enough?
Well, I think they are certainly, they certainly send a message. Yes, I think the federal charges are sending a strong message by the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney Office here in Memphis that we are going to make sure we protect citizens' civil rights, no matter whether they're black, white, brown, or red. Now, I will say this as a civil rights lawyer, this has to be the precedent. It can't just be when black officers are the people who brutalize black citizens. It gotta be when any officer brutalizes any citizen. They should be held accountable to the full extent of the law, both on the state level and on the federal level. So we think it sends a strong message, and I cannot underscore for the city of Memphis and its citizens about this pattern and practice investigation that the head of civil rights, Christian Clark, discussed. Because one thing affects directly Tyre Nichols' family. The pattern and practice affects all those other families in the whole community. And that's what it's always been about to this family. It's about everybody, child, getting home safely.
Attorney Crump, Daniel Wilkerson, Fox 13 News. There was a lot of video that was released today about the Jalen McKenzie case. Are you familiar with that case as well? Can you comment on that?
Well, Kareem Ali was just educating me a little bit on it. I don't know enough about it, but I think we're going to find out some stuff about it today.
Attorney Crump, I was curious to know what your kind of thoughts were in terms of if this federal case is now going to slow down things in state court, and along with your civil case as well.
Well, David Mendelson and Tony Ramanucci and us have been discussing that. You know, I can't fathom how delaying this helps anybody. This is a case both in criminal court unless they plea guilty, that's going to go to trial. In the civil case, unless the city steps up and does right by Tyre Nichols' family, it is going to trial. And I don't think it gets better for them as time passes. I think that, as my grandmother, when we were kids, they say you can run, but you can't hide. We all saw the video. The truth is the truth, and the truth will set us free.
And then I had one follow-up on...
Did you want to add anything on that? Okay.
I had one follow-up on the civil case. As you mentioned, the city of Memphis, they filed motions to dismiss already, and I was wondering what conversations you might have had with them and kind of your reaction to the arguments that they're making in those motions.
I think that they are not well-founded. I think that, we have all the objective evidence in the world in the tragic, brutal killing of the Memphis police officers who engaged in excessive force that we believe was part of a pattern and practice. As Attorney Ramanucci always says, it was the modus operandi of the Scorpion unit. It is what they did, and we believe there will be astonishing evidence that comes out to be able to prove that this was what they were being instructed to do. And so we feel very...
That's a live news conference with Attorney Ben Crump and the family of Tyre Nichols taking place in Memphis. As I said, this was Christian Clark, a leader of the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, announcing these charges earlier today.
The Justice Department has brought federal civil rights criminal charges against 5 former Memphis Police Department detectives involved in the tragic death of Tyre Nichols. The charges allege that 5 former Scorpion team detectives used excessive force, resulting in the death of Mr. Nichols, that they aided and abetted each other in using that excessive force, and that they failed to intervene to stop that excessive force. We also allege that after they used excessive force on Mr. Nichols, the detectives failed to render medical aid or to advise the dispatcher and emergency medical personnel of Mr. Nichols' serious medical needs, even as his condition deteriorated and as he became unresponsive. As time passed at the arrest scene, the defendants discussed striking Mr. Nichols, hitting him with straight haymakers and taking turns hitting him, information that they failed to tell EMTs and paramedics. We also charge all 5 detectives with conspiring to and taking overt action to cover up their misconduct. As Americans, our Constitution gives us certain basic rights when we interact with law enforcement officers. We have a right to be free from unreasonable force, a right to...
Folks, my panel, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA out of D.C., Dr. Larry J. Walker, assistant professor, University of Central Florida, Dr. Niambe Carter, associate professor, University of Maryland School of Public Policy, joining us from D.C. As well. I'm going to start with you, Niambe. Again, I say this all the time. This is what happens when you have an aggressive Department of Justice. You heard Ben Crump there say this is probably being the most aggressive DOJ on civil rights issues since Robert F. Kennedy was Attorney General.
Absolutely. And I think it's important, Roland, that we remember that the Department of Justice is a really significant department, not just in voting rights, but in things like this. We've seen time after time police departments get away with murder, quite literally, despite there being video evidence, despite there being witnesses who could say that a person was being brutalized and other kinds of things. So I do think it's important that we acknowledge what the Department of Justice does. And again, Roland, like you always say, elections have consequences. And this is one of those positions that is really significant for Black Americans, all Americans really. But when we think about our community and what's at stake, this is why those elections matter, because who is at the head of the Department of Justice really does have downstream consequences in things like what we see today in Memphis.
Larry, again, if you look at the last administration, they said going after cops was hurting morale. And so you've seen a much different position here. And I keep saying the Biden-Harris administration, the communications people, I don't know what the hell they're doing, why they aren't touting these successes. And this announcement should have been made from the White House podium and not at DOJ. They should have had Christian Clark come down to the White House to make this announcement.
Yeah, it's not really clear. I know, Roland, we've talked about this, the point you just made a lot about in terms of how the Biden administration really struggles in terms of making a connection between not just policies, but when we see a DOJ and what it means for the Black community in terms of holding law enforcement responsible. And it seems like almost on a weekly basis, Roland, that DOJ, led by Christian Clark, Office of Civil Rights in particular, has made sure that police officers, and also some cases corrections officers, are held responsible for the death or harm of individuals who are most likely Black and other minoritized backgrounds. But this is, once again, is really important to hold these individuals accountable. And Roland, you made a really important point comparing to what's happened with this DOJ compared to the last administration, who wasn't interested in investigating these issues, didn't care about pattern or practice investigations, and really turned a blind eye. But once again, I think the important thing is it also sends a message to these jurisdictions that DOJ is watching, is taking the necessary steps. But I do agree the Biden administration has to do a much better job of sharing this information, make sure we're talking about in barbershops, beauty salons, college campuses, et cetera.
Safa?
Yeah, it gives folks an opportunity to understand that their vote can help to ensure that they are no longer brutalized inside of their own communities. So, one, most definitely need to do a better job of highlighting and getting this message out there. And two, helping people to understand that when you vote, we can make sure that the right people are in office who will live up to the letter of the law and make sure that justice becomes a reality in our communities.
All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. When we come back, we're going to talk about journalist Jim Trotter filing a lawsuit against the NFL, a 53-page lawsuit detailing significant racism and some very disturbing comments from 2 of the league's owners. We'll break that thing down next, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. YouTube folks, be sure to hit that like button. All you got to do, just hit it and keep commenting. Don't forget, download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Also, be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. So your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Be sure to get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Mind. Available at bookstores nationwide. Get your copy on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million. Also, download the audio version on Audible. We'll be right back.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half. More money for Black entrepreneurs. Millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, are you working hard and yet your performance doesn't reflect your paycheck? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to learn some savvy career moves so that all your efforts actually show up in your bank account. Joining us is the founder of a career network, and she's going to share the 3 R's of accelerating your financial growth.
Here's a tip as well. If you are an individual contributor and you desire to be a leader, do the work where you are now. Because if you do the work where you are now, when you do reach the level, you'll be prepared to stay there.
Right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman.
Hey, it's John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
It's me, Sherry Shepherd, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Former NFL Network reporter Jim Trotter dropped a blockbuster lawsuit today against the NFL, suing them and its media arm, the NFL Network, alleging racial discrimination and retaliation after his contract was not renewed earlier this year. Trotter, who's an African-American, was employed by the league for 5 years and spoke publicly and privately multiple times about the lack of diversity at the NFL Network. And twice, he raised the issue to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell at the annual news conference at the Super Bowl. This was this year.
Hey, Roger. Jim Trotter, NFL Media. You and other league officials have said that the league's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion extend beyond the sidelines and beyond the front offices and is applied to all aspects of the company. I've worked in NFL media for 5 years. During those 5 years, we have never had a black person in senior management in our newsroom. That's a problem because we cover a league who, according to league data, the player population is 60 to 70% black, which means that there is no one who looks like these players at the table when decisions are being made about how they are covered. More concerning is that for a year plus now, we have never had a full-time black employee on the news desk, which again is a problem because we cover a league whose player population is 60 to 70% black according to league data. I asked you about these things last year, and what you told me is that the league had fallen short and you were going to review all of your policies and practices to try and improve this. And yet a year later, nothing has changed. You know, James Baldwin once said that I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And so I would ask you as an employee, when are we in the newsroom going to have a black person in senior management, and when will we have a full-time black employee on the news desk?
Well, Jim, I am not in charge of the news.
So, again, two straight years, Jim Trotter raised that particular issue. And in his lawsuit, he was very clear in terms of the fundamental problems facing the NFL Network, the lack of African Americans in key positions. But he also dropped this in the lawsuit. Go to my iPad. He said, he said that Mr. Trotter's experience with discrimination and retaliation was not limited to his termination. Throughout his employment, Mr. Trotter witnessed and observed discriminatory and/or hostile conduct by his employers, including by NFL team owners, that went entirely unchecked as a matter of standard operating procedure. As one such example, Terry Pagula, owner of the Buffalo Bills, stated in reference to player protests against racial injustice that, quote, if the black players don't like it here, they should go back to Africa and see how bad it is. Mr. Trotter raised complaints and concerns about this remark, but no remedial action was taken. As another example, Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, responded to a question posed by Mr. Trotter regarding the dearth of black professionals in decision-making positions for NFL teams by stating, quote, if blacks feel some kind of way, they should buy their own team and hire who they want to hire. Mr. Trotter raised complaints and concerns about this remark, but no remedial action was taken. Karan Phillips is a reporter for Deadspin. He joins us right now. Karan, glad to have you here. Karan, you've covered the NFL for years for a number of major publications. So these sort of things are not new to you. Jim Trotter could have easily just remained silent, could have taken a package they could have given him when he walked away. He chose not to because he wanted the freedom to be able to speak freely. And now we have this lawsuit.
We do. And I knew this lawsuit was coming. I just didn't know it was coming today, or I've been a little bit more prepared. But what this lawsuit is, and I'm happy that you went through it and showed your audience the two quotes from the owners. And I know those two quotes are the headline grabbing things from this entire situation. But I would encourage everyone, fans of the NFL, people who are just casual fans that tune in every now and then, and especially the people who have been in denial and when I say denial, I mean willful denial, about what this league is and how they operate, to get your hands on the entire 53 pages. I've read it. You need to read it. The quotes are what get your attention, but the details are in the lawsuit, because that lawsuit is the playbook for how the NFL gets down when anybody black who they feel steps out of line or says too much in public. It is right there in all 53 pages.
NFL, of course, released their statement. Go to my iPad. It said, quote, "We share Jim Trotter's passion for quality journalism created in and supported by a diverse and inclusive environment. We take his concerns seriously, but strongly dispute his specific allegations, particularly those made against his dedicated colleagues at NFL Media. Mr. Trotter's departure from NFL Media was one of many difficult decisions, similar to decisions recently made by many other media organizations to address a challenging economy and a changing media environment. Jim was one of many employees who were unfortunately affected by these business decisions. We appreciate Jim's 5 years of service at NFL Media and wish him much success in his new role. The NFL has made significant strides in improving diversity and inclusion, and while we acknowledge there's always more work to be done, we are committed to continuing that progress." Well, you can always expect that vanilla response, Karan, but here's the other deal here, and the bottom line is he lays out two very clear comments made by these owners. And if I'm a Buffalo Bills player, I damn sure want to go to Terry Pagula and say, what the hell was that all about?
You do. And the Buffalo Bills player I will go to is DeMar Hamlin, because he is the person I would have the questions for. Like you said, those quotes really are jarring to most people. I think they're jarring more to white people, if we're being honest here, because if you're black in America, somebody you know has said to you, or you've heard of, you experienced yourself, some white person telling you to go back to Africa if you don't like something. So when I read the quote and went through the lawsuit, that wasn't the thing that necessarily jumped out to me, because that was par for the course if you're black in America. It is the breakdown of how these things continue to go on. Like that response there from the NFL is what we expected. But that response is a complete lie, because if you're going to say that Jim Trotter is no longer there, and you didn't renew his contract because of financial reasons, then why do you have, to be honest, a whole bunch of sorry people at that network still have jobs when Jim Trotter, I'm old enough to remember when, last month in Birmingham, he was NABJ Journalist of the Year. And he flew into Birmingham just coming from an award he picked up from the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So you're telling me you have money to pay other employees, but not him? It just doesn't make sense. And also, like I said before, get your hands on the document, on the lawsuit. You will see how the NFL showed us how they went about getting rid of him, if you believe the allegations and the claims. Because this wasn't just some overnight decision. There's a step-by-step breakdown about how all this came into play, with the diagram that you will see in my column today on Deadspin and in the lawsuit as well, that has a picture breakdown of all the employees at NFL Media, from the owners to the ones in power in the newsroom Jim Trotter was talking about. And you will see by the photos in that document, all of them are white.
You spoke of NABJ. This is a photo of me and Jim at NABJ after he was given the Journalist of the Year award. And I'll say this here. I've been critical of NABJ. I'm a 3-time board member. I'm a lifetime member. I'm in the Hall of Fame. And frankly, our last board of directors was egregious in not giving the NFL Network the thumbs down award. I said, you give Jim the Journalist of the Year award, but how aren't you checking the NFL Network? We should have given them the thumbs down award for what they did to Jim and the failure to address this. Now, Jerry Jones has come out with his comment in response to this lawsuit. Quote, "Diversity and inclusion are extremely important to me personally and to the NFL." Come on, guys, my iPad. The representation made by Jim Trotter of a conversation that occurred over 3 years ago with myself and our VP of Player Personnel, Will McClade, is simply not accurate. Karan, here's the deal here. The attorneys that he has are the exact same attorneys who filed the lawsuit. They're standing with Brian Flores in his lawsuit against the NFL. In their statement, they said that Jim, because he's not a player, is not subject to arbitration or to mediation. So this thing can play out publicly. If Jim chooses not to settle this lawsuit, the NFL is going to have to go through significant depositions.
And to add to that, the Brian Flores case is heading to open court. The league has been trying to get that in arbitration. And for a second time, it was a month or two ago, a judge had to come out over the case and say, no, this is not going behind closed doors. No, we're not going to let you hide. This is either going to open court or you're going to have to settle. So now you add in Jim Trotter's situation, Brian Flores' situation, and please don't forget, America, that the NFL is being investigated by the attorneys generals in the state of California and New York together for allegations of racial discrimination, sexual harassment, and ageism. So for all the things the NFL are, for exciting as Monday Night Football was last night, and we understand that this is America's #1 sport. If there was ever going to be a point in the history in which this league was going to finally be held accountable, we are reaching that moment between these three cases.
And we talk about being held accountable. Look, when Colin Kaepernick sued the NFL, he and his attorneys settled for $8 million, okay? You know, and again, a person makes a decision as to what they want to do. But the reality is, again, Brian Flores, who's an assistant for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Jim Trotter, they could choose to say, no, we're going to take this thing all the way, and that's going to expose everything. They can hide behind paying somebody off. When you talked about in your story the breakdown what the NFL looks like, go to my iPad, this is it right here. You see their owners, only one person of color, that's Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars. But you'll see right here, Roger Goodell, NFL Commissioner, Brian Rolap, CEO, NFL Network, Hans Schroeder, COO, David Jurenka, Matt Quinzel, Todd Sperry, John Marvel. Again, all of these people, the top executives, the NFL Network, all white, no diversity whatsoever. And this is what he was talking about. But it wasn't even just the top executives. He was asking questions about assignment editors. He was talking about even some of the low-level positions. My former agent, Mark Watts, was the head of Vice President for Talent for the NFL Network. Galen Gordon followed him up. He left to go to ABC. And so the reality is you simply do not have black execs at the NFL Network for a league that is predominantly African-American. And frankly, for these owners, what they desire, frankly, are well-paid sharecroppers.
Yes, and everything that we've been talking about today and everything you just stated, here's the caveat to it. And this is why it's very hard for someone like me that covers race and sports on a day-to-day basis to get excited about what happened Sunday. For those who didn't realize, the NFL made history. The league for week 1 of the season had 14 black starting quarterbacks. That's never happened. But it's kind of hard to celebrate that when this league only has 3 black coaches who identify as black and the small amount of GMs and a handful of team presidents we have, and then that graphic we just saw at NFL Media that dictates how this league is covered. So while you might have progress in one small area on the field when it comes to quarterback, all of the things we discussed today have gone on to show that there isn't progress at all. There's a lot of regression happening in most places.
And for folks who don't understand why these lawsuits matter, it is because it's 2 things. And I say this all the time. And look, when we're going after the advertising industry, America only responds 2 ways. They respond to public pressure, and they respond to money. And that's what lawsuits are also about. And the reality is the NFL is a $15 billion a year entity. Yes, the #1 sport. But they have been absolutely exposed in terms of who they are. DeMaurice Smith, who left as the head of the NFL Players Association, wrote a scathing piece talking about racism in the NFL. This is a reality with this league, and they love to hide behind people who make the decisions. And look, you were critical of even Jay-Z in your piece when they signed the deal with him, when he made the point about with Kaepernick, we're way past kneeling. Well, guess what, Jay-Z? You're working with the NFL for halftime entertainment, other entertainment. We'd love to see him respond to Jim Trotter's lawsuit.
I would love to, too. And I'm happy you brought up the DeMaurice Smith piece. I've been really busy today. I haven't got a chance to read it. But I find it very convenient that DeMaurice Smith wrote this piece when just in Birmingham, there was a panel we did on race and sports that featured myself, the great Mark Spears at Anscape and ESPN, and the legend Bill Roden. DeMaurice Smith was supposed to be on that panel to have this conversation with us. DeMaurice Smith chose not to after he originally committed.
Well, hold on. I will say this here. We don't know why. He also was supposed to come on our show in July, but his 93-year-old father took seriously ill. So, again, I don't know why. So I actually sent him a text today saying, hey, but he's supposed to come on the show. So he sent me a text message on July 5th of that particular piece. It was called The Rooney Suggestion. And he's supposed to come on July 12th, but he's told me his 93-year-old father suddenly got ill. So, and I sent him a text message that, hey, I'd love to have you on. How was your dad? Haven't heard back from him. So, again, that could have been the reason why he wasn't there, because his dad took ill. And
you know, prayers to his family, and it's understandable. But I have been in other press conferences in other rooms where he's been. And I'll say this very gently as I can. The energy has been consistent, and I'll just leave it there.
Well, the thing for me is it's real simple. And that is, you can talk about these things, but you have to confront them as aggressively as possible. And you cannot dance with racism. You cannot dance with racists. You cannot placate them. And it does take individuals of courage. And the reality is Brian Flores had courage to step up. Now, I made it perfectly clear to him and his attorneys, stop only talking to white media. Y'all need to come talk to black-owned media. I'm still waiting for him to come over here. But it takes courage for Jim to do what he does, because, look, there are other black folks at the NFL Network who ain't said a word, who haven't spoken up. And unfortunately, I always talk about parking lot militants. A lot of folks love talking stuff in the parking lot. When you go into the building, they get real quiet. And so there are moments when black folks who work in a place have to understand it may be Jim Trotter today, but it might be you tomorrow, and you might get laid off, and then you're like, oh my goodness, I was a model employee, but it doesn't matter. So I don't want to hear nothing after the fact. My whole deal is, when you're in the trenches, as Jim said, you've got to change these things for the people who are coming behind you. Karan, final comment.
Good point. And we saw this with the Brian Flores case, like we talked about earlier. At first, it was Brian Flores having that courage, and then we saw Steve Wilkes and Ray Horton join in with him. I would be interested, as I know you are, if anyone else from NFL Media, NFL Network, or other black reporters who have covered the league also want to jump in this lawsuit with our brother Jim Trotter, or file their own.
Jim released these comments here. Go to my iPad. He said the NFL has claimed it wants to be held accountable regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. I tried to do so, and it cost me my job. I'm filing this lawsuit because I can't complain about things that are wrong if I'm unwilling to fight for what is right. He also said, I hope this lawsuit leads to real change across the league and in the newsroom. It is on the backs of a majority black player population that owners have made billions, and those players deserve to have someone who shares their cultural and life experiences at the table when decisions are being made about how they are being covered. Karan Phillips, we appreciate it, bro. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, going to a break. We come back. We'll discuss this further right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Millions of new good-paying jobs. He's lowering the cost of medications and the cost of living. Joe Biden is delivering for us, and that's the facts.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change. Respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful? No, no.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hello, we're the Critter Fixers. I'm Dr. Bernard Hodges.
And I'm Dr. Terrence Ferguson.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Of course, you have NFL owners who are already denying the comments they made to Jim Trotter, but here's the deal. When it's time for deposition time, it's going to be real hard to lie under oath. That right there is the fundamental thing here, Mustafa. And I really do hope that Jim Trotter is aggressive in moving forward with this lawsuit, because these folks need to be held accountable for their actions.
Yeah, once the spotlight is placed on, then the truth has to move forward, or you can end up getting yourself in some serious trouble and actually could spend up time in jail. So I'm glad that he's bringing this forward. I think that there's another question to be asked is, for the everyday individual, how do we get engaged to make sure that we are holding folks accountable as well? So we have the legal process, which is incredibly important, but we also have the consumer. And what are we willing to do to make sure that our voices are also being supportive of Jim, but also letting these entities know that they can no longer do the things that they have done for decades upon decades now?
I think what has to happen, Larry, is we've got to have people today who have some courage. And here's what I mean by that. So, I have been highly critical of Texas A&M University Board of Regents, its administration, for its treatment of Kathleen McElroy, who was supposed to run the journalism department. And there are text messages where you have these white conservative board members who said, we cannot allow this to happen. Well, every December, there's a whole weekend of the Black Former Student Network. They have an event called the Aggie Impact Gala. I was an honoree in its first year. And so I got an email about us having the event this year. And I sent them an email and I saying, why are we having this event on campus? Why are we not having it in Houston or Dallas? And why are we not sending a signal that we are not going to be spending money on this campus? We can assist the students, we can stay with existing students, but we have to be taking some sort of position so they understand where we come from. And the response that I got back really pissed me off. What it said was, there's a firm perspective that we shouldn't take this moment to rock the boat. And I made clear to them, I said, well, because what happens is if you're a previous honoree, they provide you tickets for the event. I said, well, one, ain't no in hell I'm showing up. My brother, who's a graduate, he's not showing up. My sister ain't showing up. Her husband's Aggie ain't showing up. And I made it clear, y'all are not getting a dime of my money for an endowed scholarship. My problem, Larry, is that we have a whole bunch of parking lot Black militants today who talk shit on social media or individually, but when it comes time to take a stand, they run for cover. And that's why a lot of stuff doesn't change.
You got to be willing to listen. Black folks have been always catching hell, regardless if it's NFL, corporate America, et cetera. And you're right, Roland. You have to be willing to put it out there. And I know we've talked about that a lot on your show. And it's not easy. Listen, Roland, not all black folks are built for this, built for that, activism. They just aren't. And there are a lot of people, like the quote you just highlighted, are willing just to play it safe. But listen, when it comes to civil fight for racial justice, when you play it safe, you can't push the agenda forward to make sure black folks are treated fairly in the United States. And Roland, I want to go to two contradictions in the statements, the one from the NFL and the other one, and the other comment. So the first one, as it relates to the NFL in terms of not having the money, they're getting allegedly getting like $2 billion alone from YouTube Network, from YouTube to show the Sunday Ticket. That's not including the ESPN, Fox, CBS, and NBC money. So they're making billions of dollars. So the idea they let him go based on the fact of, the economy is tough makes no sense. The NFL is thriving. And we've seen some of the recent numbers of the last couple of days for the games for the first weekend. So the idea they let him go because of that is ridiculous. And also the comment that Jerry Jones made, he contradicted himself. He said he didn't say it, and then he said what happened 3 years ago. Wait a minute, you just said a line before that you never made the comment. So I want to really see once he said, I want to see this go to discovery, Roland, because I want to see once these folks in front of a judge have to talk about whatever conversations they had that Jim is outlining in this case. And listen, we have to be willing, to those who are NFL fans, we have to be willing to stay steadfast, because once again, there's so many brothers playing in the NFL, and once again, they're not being represented not only in the NFL but some of these other networks also.
And see what happens, Neon Bay. I hear these folks who go, "Oh, but I just can't do without. I can't do without. I gotta watch games. I gotta support." And I'm going, "But you do, but you want stuff to change." The reality is, and Jim details this in the lawsuit, where he details what took place and how he was retaliated against. The day after he asked the question to Roger Goodell for the second consecutive year, his supervisor was like, "Why does Jim keep bringing this up?" Because shit didn't change. That's why. And I've worked in newsrooms all across this country, and I can tell you, I've dealt with white executives who are completely clueless about what's happening in the newsroom, because all they see is white. They don't see anything significant. They don't, and they go, "Well, why do we have to have diversity? Why do we have these things?" Because they are used to a sea of whiteness. And in the NFL, what they like the black players out there doing their jobs. But their whole deal is, we ain't gonna change stuff. And what people need to understand, one of the most racist places in sports has always been the press box. Mm-hmm. And that's the talk show hosts, the columnists, the writers. My man Gary Howard was the first black sports editor of a major sports section. And he was the only one for the longest. Right now, I don't believe there are three. We're talking about sports. The person running the sports department. That's how major this thing is, and how whiteness has dominated mainstream media.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Roland, this is a microcosm of the larger world that we live in, where people are happy and content to have black bodies entertain them, to be beaten up in front of them, right, to sacrifice themselves for the sake of entertainment. But I think you brought up something earlier that was really important, is what are we willing to sacrifice in support of folks like Jim Trotter and the players and others who are trying to fight the good fight, but they can't do it by themselves. And if we're not willing to take our eyeballs off of television, right, when we know that there's this history of protest in our communities where people actually did do stuff like not ride buses for a full year, but we can't bear to take our eyes off the television and stop supporting this institution that seems hell-bent on keeping black men in one position only, and that is as players, not as owners, not as members of the press corps, not as coaches, right? Not as any of the defensive coordinators, heads of physical therapy teams. You name the gamut of leadership positions within the NFL or any other organization, then we have to ask, how much do we really care about these black men really, if we can't even do the barest of minimums, which is to tune out and demand that these institutions give us better than they give. And then certainly when we talk about folks like Jay-Z and others who are willing, right, to sort of provide cover for these institutions, I think we have to be more than critical. And of course, we all love a good halftime show, and I'm sure people love the competition and the sport, right? Everyone was so excited on Sunday to see the games coming back, et cetera, et cetera. But when we start thinking about what this NFL takes and how little it gives in return, then we can't wonder why we continue to get disrespected by this institution and any others, because we keep saying, it doesn't matter. We want to be entertained. It doesn't matter. We still need our sports. So we're not willing to hold Roger Goodell or any of these other people's feet to the fire because we want to be entertained, not really affect change.
Absolutely. So, folks, we're going to continue to follow this, and hopefully we will have more to share with you. All right, folks, when we come back, dictators do what dictators also do. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has removed 2 Democrat state's attorneys, one of them African-American, because he claims they're soft on the crime. Now, this degenerate is literally trying to change the lines to prevent them from running for re-election. Wait till I tell you what he is trying to do. Even Republicans are calling him out for this abuse of power. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Next on The Black Tape with me, Greg Carr. What do Deion Sanders, a lawnmower, and the phenomenon of invisible labor all have in common? They're all now part of, shall we say, a colorful lore at our historically black colleges and universities. Our Master Educator Roundtable convenes to explain it all as we explore the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of one of Black America's national treasures. That's next on The Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hey, what's up? Geek Theory in the place to be. Got Kicked Out Your Mama's University, creator and executive producer of Fat Tuesdays, an air hip-hop comedy. But right now, I'm rolling with Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
A Florida Republican state attorney is strongly criticizing the ongoing effort by Governor Ron DeSantis to redraw long-standing judicial circuit boundaries. Dennis Ward, a chief prosecutor overseeing the 16th Judicial Circuit, is raising concerns about what DeSantis is doing, calling it a political maneuver to prevent suspended Democratic prosecutors Andrew Warren and Monique Worrell from winning in the upcoming elections. And remember, he suspended both of them, replacing them with sycophants. Now, Worrell has already said she's running again. Warren has not made that public declaration. This consolidation study shows that reevaluating the current judicial circuit configuration is a rational response to the state's growing growth. Now, this is what DeSantis is saying since establishing the 20 judicial circuits in 1969. Yeah, that's what they're trying to say. But the reality is, we know that's all BS. Joining us right now is, from Orlando, is Monique Worrell. Glad to have you here. Again,
thank you for having me. Glad to be back.
The sheer pettiness of Ron DeSantis. This is somebody who will do anything to secure power, even if it means screwing the will of the voters. And let's remind people, you didn't win 50.5% to 49.5%. You got nearly 67% of the vote. Clearly the people where you wanted you to be their state's attorney.
Yeah, absolutely, Roland. So there were 397,000 people who elected me to become state attorney of the Ninth Judicial Circuit. And essentially what DeSantis has done is overturn the will of the voters yet again. He did it to Andrew Warren 1 year before he did it to me, and he's done it to various Democrats elected to their positions as school board and other positions throughout the state. So because it is such obvious political gamesmanship going on here in the state of Florida, I was actually surprised today when I saw the article where a Republican state attorney called the governor out for doing it again. He knows that it would be very difficult for the appointed state attorney that he put in both my seat and Andrew Warren's seat to win elections. So he is gerrymandering the court districts in the same way that he gerrymandered the congressional districts, to which the court said, no, you have basically ensured that Black votes won't count. So what you've done with gerrymandering the congressional districts is unconstitutional. He's trying to do the same thing with the court districts to water down the Democratic vote so that it would be impossible for myself or Andrew Warren to be reelected in 2024.
So explain to people what this redrawing means and how does it water down? Explain that.
So there are, Florida has shown itself, unfortunately, to be a red state, but there are strong blue pockets within that red state. Central Florida, where I am the elected state attorney, is one of them. Tampa, Hillsborough County has been kind of purple, but Andrew Warren was elected there twice. Jacksonville just elected a Democrat as mayor for, I believe, the first time in its history. So there are blue pockets. And what is consistent about these blue pockets is that they have rejected Ron DeSantis in those blue pockets. So in true form, he has retaliated against those areas by unseating their elected officials. Now, if this gerrymandering goes through, and let me tell you, it's a strong if, because there is very little that the governor has asked of the courts or of the legislature here in the state of Florida that hasn't actually happened. The fact that he's able to be governor while running for president, he changed the law to allow that to happen. The fact that he could make what happened to Disney retroactive. He changed the law to allow it to happen, and the legislature went along with him in allowing that. So there's very little that he's wanted that hasn't happened. And if this gerrymandering goes through, what will actually happen is that he will consolidate a circuit like mine, the Ninth Judicial Circuit, with red circuits, and that will mean that it will be hard for Democrats to be elected in those circuits.
Questions from our panel. First off, Niambi. Start with Larry. Larry, you're there in Florida, so Larry, you go first.
Yeah, thank you, Roland. And so I live in the district. So, and I'm really concerned. Obviously, I've been following this in terms of some of what's happening recently with the governor. And certainly, we talked about gerrymandering the congressional district and what's happened recently in that case. And so, as someone who lives in the district and someone who follows politics, can you talk about, obviously, you start off with this criticism of saying that you were suspended, for being soft on crime, which obviously that's not the case. But can you talk broader about what this means about historically Republicans have talked about, the importance of, local government and letting, people, whoever makes the decisions in that jurisdiction, the voters, et cetera, make their own decisions. Can you talk a little bit more about the contradiction of that historical narrative, small, local government, let those individuals make those decisions. And then this overreach we've seen recently, and this obviously we're talking about this case, and obviously also what happened with the congressional district.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is the hypocrisy in modern day democracy, because essentially Republicans will say and do whatever is right for the time. You can't say that you believe in law and order and then change the laws that exist so that they can suit you better, right? That's hypocrisy. You can't say that the criminal legal system is being weaponized and then weaponize that very system against political foes yourself, right? So what we're seeing is hypocrisy, and that is them saying, we don't want big government, we don't want big government. But there's nothing bigger than a government where the Republican governor comes in and starts suspending Democrats that have been elected by the people. And yes, to the point that you made earlier, soft on crime is ridiculous. We've been smart on crime in the Ninth Judicial Circuit. What has come out in the lawsuit that I filed against the governor last week is that we have had the lowest violent crime rate under my administration that has been in the entire last 10 years. Right? In the entire last 10 years, not the last 2 administrations or so, but the last decade in this circuit, my administration has seen the lowest crime rates. So it's just hypocritical. It's not based in fact. It's not based in evidence. And that's essentially what my lawsuit against the governor has stated, is that he has used unconstitutional grounds for my removal, and it can't stand.
Niambi.
So thank you for the work that you're doing and continuing to fight this autocratic move. But I wanted to ask, what do you see as the sort of spillover effects of this? Because we know once we violate a norm, even though DeSantis views this as his discretion, when he did this to State Attorney Warren and now you, but also the other 20 plus officials that he's removed from office, what do you see as the spillover effects? Because we already see some states investigating deriving powers like the one that DeSantis is using to abuse people that he views to be in his way, such as yourself. How do we step away, right, or step back from this kind of precedent if we see a norm violator like DeSantis using this to great effect in his home state to consolidate power?
You know, unfortunately, what we're seeing is the end of democracy. And I think that this will continue because now that he has shown that he can suspend people without any consequences, even the judges who will hear my case have to fear in the back of their minds that if they don't hand him the decision that he's asking for, then they too could be suspended or removed. And where does it end? So if we've given him this sort of authoritarian power, where does it end? No elected official will be safe, because if they cross the governor, then they can fear removal. And he's running for president. So we thought the January 6th insurrection was something in trying to overturn the will of the voters. You've already had an individual who has shown that he has no respect for the will of the voters.
Mustafa.
Monique, thank you for standing up for justice continually. You know, this really reminds me of around 1877 in the South, when we're coming out of the Reconstruction period and people began to extract the rights of Black folks. I'm curious. In this moment, we've seen Ron DeSantis reaching down on the local level to exert his power. What role does the federal government play in helping to address some of these egregious things that we see going on, if at all?
So we know that in the case against Andrew Warren, Judge Hinkle, the judge out of the federal court in that area, said that while he believed that everything that DeSantis was doing was illegal, that he was powerless to stop him. So I believe that it's going to be for the Department of Justice to step in and stop him from these violations, because he is literally in a dictatorship.
Indeed, indeed. Well, look, bottom line is you have to fight this stuff tooth and nail, and it's going to be fought in the courtrooms. He has to be exposed, and most importantly, to everybody who's watching, you also fight this at the ballot box by denying what he absolutely wants. Monique Worrell, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
All right, folks, got to go to a break. We'll be back. Roland Unfiltered. Republicans want to impeach President Joe Biden. For what? more bullshit. That's what we're dealing with right here. We'll talk about that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Don't forget, supporters of what we do. Contribute to our Bring the Funk fan club. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. That's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. Folks, we are going to the middle of September. We are behind by about $400,000 from our goal. And so the work that you see here, the stories that we cover, the newsmakers that we have come on, folks, none of this stuff is free. It doesn't happen just because. There's a cost associated with all of this. So the graphics and the staff and the cameras and the studio and the travel, all of those things, guess what? That stuff costs. We're out here fighting a good fight when it comes to advertising, but we also need your support as much as we can. So please send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 20037-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And of course, you can get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. All proceeds go right back into this show. And so get your book at bookstores nationwide. Get it from Amazon. Also, you can download the audio version on Audible. We'll be right back.
Next, right here on The Frequency, the woman they call the Gifted Eye, hip-hop celebrity photographer Coy Soldier. She's the master storyteller that captured the history of hip-hop through the lens of her camera.
Tupac comes out, the next thing you know, you didn't know who they were at first. You just seen all these dudes just come rushing the stage. Then you realize Biggie gets a bottle of champagne, he pops it open, sprays it on the crowd, he drinks the bottle.
Coy Soldier, the hip-hop celebrity photographer, joining me right here on the next episode of The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
On his first day in office, with the country in crisis, President Biden got to work for us. Cutting Black child poverty in half, more money for Black entrepreneurs, millions of new, good-paying jobs. He's lowered the cost of living and prescription drugs. But there's more to do. He gets it because we all deserve dignity, safety, respect, and a chance to do more than just get by, but to get ahead.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, are you working hard and yet your performance doesn't reflect your paycheck? On the next Get Wealthy, you're going to learn some savvy career moves so that all your efforts actually show up in your bank account. Joining us is the founder of a career network, and she's going to share the 3 R's of accelerating your financial growth.
Here's a tip as well. If you are an individual contributor and you desire to be a leader, do the work where you are now. Because if you do the work where you are now, when you do reach the level, you'll be prepared to stay there.
Right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Jamia Pugh. I am from Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just an hour right outside of Philadelphia.
My name is Jasmine Pugh. I'm also from Coatesville, Pennsylvania.
You are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay right here.
The weak and impotent Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy wants to launch an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. Now, he's been under pressure from the Nutcase Freedom Caucus. They've been threatening to remove him as Speaker. So during a news conference today, McCarthy laid out his so-called reason for moving ahead with this totally BS impeachment inquiry.
You know, in the months that we were gone, in the weeks, House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption. Now, here's what we know so far. Through our investigations, we have found that President Biden did lie to the American people about his own knowledge of his family's foreign business dealings. Eyewitnesses have testified that the president joined on multiple phone calls and had multiple interactions. Dinners resulted in cars and millions of dollars into his son's and his son's business partners. We know that bank records show that nearly $20 million in payments were directed to the Biden family members and associates through various shell companies. The Treasury Department alone has more than 150 transactions involving the Biden family and other business associates that were flagged as suspicious activity by U.S. banks. Even a trusted FBI informant has alleged a bribe to the Biden family. Biden used his official office to coordinate with Hunter Biden's business partners about Hunter's role in Burisma, a Ukrainian energy company. Finally, despite these serious allegations, it appears that the president's family has been offered special treatment by Biden's own administration. Treatment that not otherwise would have received.
All right, so now I want to show y'all this here. So this is, again, if you want to see hypocrisy, all you got to do is look at what Kevin McCarthy said 4 years ago when he was critical of Democrats moving forward. All right, first, let me read this, okay? He said, here are the facts. Speaker Pelosi can't decide on impeachment unilaterally. It requires the full vote of the House Representatives. The House has voted 3 times on articles of impeachment. Each votes failed. For Dems, this is all about politics, not about facts. Well, guess what, y'all? The problem here is he's doing the exact same thing. So watch this video right here, y'all. Check this out.
Allegations as well. This effort will be led by Chairman James Comer at the Committee on Oversight in coordination with Chairman Jim Jordan.
But the people that are hurting the American public because the work that is not being done in Congress today. The funding of our troops, the funding of government, prescription drug prices, our trade, our strength to our economy can all get done if they'd only focus on the work of why they were elected. But there's one person that has the power to bring it forth, the Speaker of the House, too enthralled in impeachment to do anything else.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden.
But the people that are hurting their
So, interesting here. Niambe, it shows you, first of all, they keep talking about, oh my God, all these, they have no proof. They even have Republicans on Fox News and other places saying, y'all don't have the goods. Kevin McCarthy is doing this to save his ass because Matt Gaetz and the Freedom Caucus are all over his behind.
Well, sure. I mean, he's been an ineffectual leader from the beginning. I mean, the deals he had to cut to become the speaker in the first place, we knew we would be in some mess with Kevin McCarthy. But I think it's also worth noting these people have been looking for 9 months and still haven't found anything. Even his fellow members said that they wouldn't find anything. And I think the reason he decided to do it this way, as opposed to seeking the votes of members of the House, which he said he would do, that he believed in the impeachment, but that he would take it to other members of the House, is because he knows that his caucus is fractured and he does not have the votes to move this process forward. So they're going to go searching again for nothing because the only thing they can talk about is Hunter Biden. Meanwhile, their top contender is indicted 4 times, has been civilly convicted of sexual assault, and is now facing a raft of other investigations around voting rights. So I think it's really interesting that, Kevin McCarthy is trying to tell us to look over here instead of looking at the very real thing that's right in front of us. And try as they might, this is just going to lead to an additional waste of time. They certainly won't get the votes in the Senate. But again, he has to do what his handlers are telling him he has to do. And right now, that's his hard right colleagues who are telling him they're going to withdraw support, like Matt Gaetz did today and said he is in violation, right, of promises that he made to his fellow caucus members.
And the thing here, Mustafa, is they are desperate to kiss Trump's ass. Politico reported that he was on the call urging House leaders. They are doing this because of Donald Trump. He needs this because he's mad that he got impeached twice.
Exactly. This is all about politics. It is about the presidential election. It is about their lack of any substantive policy. It is about Speaker McCarthy not being able to hold his coalition together and also being one of the least effective speakers of the House, at least in the modern era. You know, it is nothing further than a farce. It is exactly what that is. And, you know, he continues to get punked by the Freedom Caucus. I don't know any other way to say it. I watch it play out all the time. And they're doing this in a moment when the government is about to shut down, when they should actually be focused on the substantive sets of policy actions that our country needs to be in a better place.
But even with that, what they want to do, they now want to extract more out of this by shutting the government down. And here's the thing. The United States has never defaulted on its credit. But you know what, Larry? This is where Biden should say, I dare y'all. No, I'm not about to sit here and do more insanity because you guys are threatening to shut the government down. You put the entire blame on them and say, you're going to own this, House Republicans.
So I think that Speaker McCarthy should write a book, How to Lose the House Majority, because that's what's going to happen. This impeachment, we talk about the likelihood of the possibility of a government shutdown. This is not how you govern. And over the last, 10 to 15 years, the Republicans have consistently governed as far down and make a slide down and meet to the bottom as quickly as possible. The other thing, Roland, I don't think we haven't discussed is during the Trump administration, the DOJ created a policy that that the inquiry really doesn't work. You have to have a vote on the House floor to require DOJ and some other pieces to get moving. So the inquiry just is not enough. You have to have a vote on the floor. The challenge is the moderate Republicans are not going to vote. They're not going to support this because they know they will not win re-election. So once again, McCarthy is just doing this, as my colleagues highlighted, because of the Freedom Caucus, the right-wing Freedom Caucus. But the bottom line is what's going to happen is most of America is going to suffer because they don't have the ability to properly govern.
Well, absolutely right. And again, we are seeing the games that they play. And people need to understand this is going to continue. But this is where, again, you can't play footsie with these hardliners, Niambi. You must return the kind of heat that they are demanding, and you put it all on them. And you say, okay, if y'all want America to default, go right ahead. Now, people are going to say, well, but they're going to run an ad saying it defaulted on the watch of Joe Biden. This is where, if you're the White House, you show the kind of crazy things that they are demanding and how that is going to hurt the economy. This requires an aggressive response and an aggressive communications response from the Biden-Harris administration.
I think it does, but I think we also know, for reasons that you noted, that Joe Biden won't do that. One, it's an election cycle, but two, I just think that's not in his nature. He has always wanted to be a legislator. He has always wanted to do bipartisan deals and cooperate. And yes, I think for the reasons you noted, we are way beyond that right now. These people don't care about governing. They care about power. And Joe Biden, I think, is still operating from a place where he thinks that there can be deals made, that there can be negotiations, that the Democratic caucus can actually work with Republicans here. Unfortunately, these people have demonstrated over and over and over again, they don't actually care about any of that stuff. What they care about is just this sort of naked taking of power. And if they can't do it fairly, they're going to do it by force. And that's going to be at the state level. And that's certainly going to be here yet again, where we see government shutdown looming over top of us. And I think Joe Biden, unfortunately, to the end, is going to try to work with Republican members of that body, despite them showing they have no interest in working together.
Absolutely. All right, folks, hold tight 1 second. I got to play for y'all something when we come back from this break. This CEO lays out exactly what many of these CEOs think today when it comes to workers. And this fool literally says, oh, we absolutely need higher unemployment so these sharecroppers can get in line. That's basically what he said. Wait till I play for this next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on The Black Tape with me, Greg Carr. What do Deion Sanders, a lawnmower, and the phenomenon of invisible labor all have in common? They're all now part of, shall we say, a colorful lore at our historically black colleges and universities. Our Master Educator Roundtable convenes to explain it all as we explore the good, the bad, and the downright ugly of one of Black America's national treasures. That's next on the Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
All change is not growth.
Right.
But thoughtful change is real good fertilizer. And that's what has been so beneficial to us.
But you also were not afraid of the pivot.
Well, and I'm a black woman in business. Come on, I don't care how I dress up. I don't care who I'm speaking with. I don't care what part of the world I am in. I still am a black woman in business. Being afraid of the pivot, being fearful of change is not what got me here. Respectful of change, respectful of pivot, yeah. Fearful, no, no.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, we're going to be talking about common sense. We think that people have it, know how to use it, but it is something that people often have to learn. The truth is, most of us are not born with it, and we need to teach common sense, embrace it, and give it to those who need it most, our kids.
So I always tell teachers to listen out to what conversations the students are having about what they're getting from social media, and then let's get ahead of it and have the appropriate conversations with them.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud on the Proud Family.
I am Tommy Davidson. I play Oscar on Proud Family, Louder and Proud.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie Payton, voice of Sugar Mama on Disney's Louder and Prouder, Disney Plus. And I'm with Roland Martin on Unfiltered.
All right, folks, North Carolina parents are desperately trying to find their daughter, Zia Jordan Robinson. They say Zia has been missing since March, but they just were able to file a missing persons report Monday. The 22-year-old is 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighs 120 pounds with dark brown hair and brown eyes. She has a surgical scar along her spinal cord. Her family says Zia was last seen walking in Tampa, Florida, where she worked at a local hospital. The last person believed to have seen her was her ex-boyfriend, Noah Francisco Ruff Roland, who now lives in Asheville, North Carolina. Anyone with information about Zia Jordan Robinson is urged to call the Greensboro, North Carolina Criminal Investigations Division at 336-373-2255, 336-373-2255. Now, you've often heard us talk about what a lot of these CEOs really think about workers. Well, the Gurner Group founder, Tim Gurner, gave an interview. He was on this panel discussion, and he literally said out loud what many CEOs say privately. Now, he's out of Australia, but trust me, what he said, you literally heard folks talk about in the United States and other places as well. Listen to this BS.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40-50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost.
Okay, I hope that y'all really, really capture what this dude just said. Okay, get ready to play this again because I really want y'all to listen to what this guy just said. And there are some critical phrases that I want you to hear because remember what he's saying. I remember Larry Summers, the former head of the White House Council of Economic Advisors under Obama. I remember he was saying the exact same thing in order to curb inflation in the United States. Watch and listen again.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided that they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
Okay. So this dude literally said, we need unemployment to go up 40 to 50%. Oh, these people need to suffer. We need to have pain. They need to know that how dare these workers let the employers know they're lucky to have them. Were y'all really listening to what? I'm going to play this one more time because I need you to understand what this man is saying is literally what a lot of American CEOs are saying. Remember when Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina complained about the benefits, the unemployment benefits of workers, saying, oh, they're making this. Why should they go to work? He didn't say nothing about the low wages. He didn't say, well, damn, this ridiculous, they're making this. No, these people want the poor, the working poor, to basically be begging them, thanking them on their knees. Oh, thank you, Massa. Thank you for this job. Oh, my God. And then he complained about productivity. Oh, how it's gone down. Productivity has not gone down. After the video, play it again, I'm going to show you how productivity has gone up. Oh, I'm sorry, but not to the degree that they want. Watch and listen for a final time.
I think the problem that we've had is that we have people decided that they didn't really want to work so much anymore through COVID, and that has had a massive issue on productivity. Tradies have definitely pulled back on productivity. They have been paid a lot to do not too much in the last few years, and we need to see that change. We need to see unemployment rise. Unemployment has to jump 40, 50% in my view. We need to see pain in the economy. We need to remind people that they work for the employer, not the other way around. I mean, there's been a systematic change where employees feel the employer is extremely lucky to have them, as opposed to the other way around. So it's a dynamic that has to change. We've got to kill that attitude, and that has to come through hurting the economy, which is what the whole global, the world is trying to do. The governments around the world are trying to increase unemployment to get that to some sort of normality. And we're seeing it. I think every employer now is seeing it. I mean, there is definitely massive layoffs going off. People might not be talking about it, but people are definitely laying people off, and we're starting to see less arrogance in the employment market, and that has to continue because that will cascade across the cost balance.
We've got to bring pain to the economy. Now, he said productivity has gone down. No, it hasn't. Go to my iPad. Now, first of all, let me explain to you what I'm about to show you. This is from the Conference Board, which is the global nonprofit think tank and business membership organization. And so these are business people, okay? So understand the headline. Let me show you this here. It says global productivity growth set to disappoint again in 2023. So you might say, oh my goodness, productivity has been dropping. Well, actually it hasn't. When you read it, it says, according to the Conference Board Global Productivity Brief 2023, GDP, gross domestic product, per hour worked, a standard definition of labor productivity, is set to rise just plus 1.2% in 2023. That's a welcome improvement from 2022, which saw zero growth, but a far cry from the plus 3.8% surge recorded in 2020, or the 2.6% annual productivity growth average over the 2011 and 2019 span. Now, watch this quote. While modest labor productivity growth is expected to return in 2023, the trend remains disappointing, posing serious long-term headwinds for the world economy. This is Klaus de Vries, senior economist at the Conference Board. Today's historically tight labor markets preview a future where aging demographics will increasingly constrain the growth of the labor supply. Okay, so let me unpack this, folks. What they're saying is, get your ass in there and work harder. What we need you to do is keep working your ass off, making us a lot more money. Oh, and by the way, we don't want to sit here and pay you wages. Now, when he talked about what people were going through when it came to COVID, here's the reality that actually happened during COVID. People all of a sudden saw, because remember, the norm was get up early, get in your car, take public transportation, go to work, eat there downtown, eat your lunch at your desk, stay late, come home, try to cook your dinner, then work with your kids and homework, whatever, see your spouse for an hour or so, go to sleep, and do this thing over again. Here's what COVID did. COVID showed people, why am I sitting in traffic an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to work, and then an hour and a half, 2 hours to get home? COVID showed people, wait a minute, how much money am I making? COVID also showed people, I can do a lot of this stuff. Look, the wasted meetings. How many companies realized we didn't have to keep flying people around the country to be meeting with folks in person when, hell, we could use technology and meet with them? That was saving us money, but also saving them time because they were actually at home. People actually began to look at their quality of life. They began to say, wow, I really like being able to see my children. I really like being able to spend time with my family members. And so when we came, not out of COVID, but when we sort of came back to normal, people said, you know what? I'm not really down with that life that I previously had. So this whole great resignation, people were complaining about that. It is because people realized the game that was being played. They realized how much of their life they were losing by just working every single day, and companies weren't showing any appreciation. So today, the companies are now pissed. They're pissed because unemployment is low. They're pissed because they actually have to now compete for workers. They're pissed that they actually now have to pay more. Don't y'all remember the bar owners and the restaurant owners who were like, oh, damn, we now got to offer incentives. We now got to sit here and do more just to get people. Or how about the guys who paid their workers more than realized oh, they didn't actually lose money or lose customers. They actually increased their revenue. What this CEO is publicly saying is, we are sick of y'all making demands of us. Can't we go back to how things were when all y'all did was just shut up and work? That's really what's at play here, Mustafa.
Oh, without a doubt. You know, he sounds like he's from the aristocracy in the 1700s when Marie Antoinette told him, let them eat cake. In other words, you know, you need to be humble and you need to take whatever is given to you. And it is a new day. Folks are no longer going to just accept that they're not being paid a fair wage. Folks are no longer going to give up their time, like you said, with their loved ones. And people demand more, as they should. And the last point is, I don't know what kind of economist he's ever been around, because anytime you have a 40 or 50%, increase, you would actually collapse economies. So I'm glad that people are standing up for their rights and saying we deserve better, and we are going to make sure that that becomes a reality, or we'll go work for somebody else.
See, I had somebody in the chat, Niambi, say, well, Roland, he's right. We do need unemployment to go up in order to bring inflation down. That's actually a lie. Lawrence Summers, again, Harvard economist, he was running around saying the same thing, and Jon Stewart just eviscerated his ass. I'm gonna try to find that video. But here's the reality right here. Go to my iPad. Over the past year, inflation in the United States has tumbled from 9% all the way to 3%. Softening most of the price pressures that have gripped the nation for more than 2 years. Well, guess what, Niambi? Are you telling me that inflation went from 9% to 3%? Did unemployment go up? Nope, it kept going down.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I mean, this is not about any of that. This is about a CEO like Tim Gurner and others of his ilk being able to line their pockets with more and more money, and the way they do it is by nickel and diming their employees. And to Mustafa's point, people decided that you actually are rich because of our labor, not the other way around. I think, some of these people who are wealthy, some of them are born on third thinking they hit a triple. It's not you out here, prospecting or building these buildings or doing all of the sort of hard labor that makes you very wealthy. And I think it's really rich that a person like a Tim Gurner, who's almost a billionaire, talking about the pain that gets inflicted. Because when Mustafa was referencing the 17th century, we know how that story ended. It did not end well for those very same elites who were very glib about people's poverty and people's desperation and people's pain. So I think we want to be very careful about suggesting that people need to hurt more, because there are all these other residual effects. One, the rich don't necessarily tend to fare very well in collapsing economies. Two, we see things like domestic violence and child abuse and other things go off. There are really detrimental things that happen when we see people have pain. And if we don't want to pay people fairly, and we don't think that people have a way to speak back to their employers and to say that we're not happy, then we're asking those very same people to revolt. And that is not a maybe, that's not a possibility. That's what happens when you see this kind of pain inflicted on such a large scale.
See, one of the things that we have seen, Larry, we have seen what actually used to be outlawed. I'm looking for this video from Robert Reich where he talks about this here. Stock buybacks used to be illegal, but that changed under Ronald Reagan. What these companies have done, they have, when they've gotten tax breaks, all the money that they made, they plowed that back into stock buybacks and only benefiting the shareholders, not the workers, not the people. See, this is what this guy's saying. We need you workers to shut up, be grateful, keep busting your ass, making us more money so we can do stock buybacks and reward the investors and not actually reward the people who are actually doing the work. That's really what he's saying here.
That's exactly what he's saying. And we talk about stock buybacks. I think we've seen in the last, 2 years or so, some of these companies, after they give all this money to stake, people to own stock, what they do is sometimes, in some cases, they fold, and then workers are left with nothing, virtually nothing. And so you're right, Roland, in terms of the comments he made. I think the other thing we all have to acknowledge is watching the video that he looks and sounds like a Disney villain, telling the peasants to keep quiet while he eats roasted chicken. But this is, as you said, Roland, is an attitude of a lot of these Fortune 500 CEOs. And Roland, the other thing in terms of his comments, research shows that the gap between what CEOs are making and what their employees are making has widened over the last several years, post-pandemic. So this idea that individuals who work at the company should work harder but not be paid more and shouldn't complain is ridiculous. And also it reflects what's wrong with various forms of capitalism. This idea of those who work or middle class or poor should work themselves to death while I enrich myself, lived comfortably, and then pass that wealth on to another generation.
And look, I mean, here's the reality, and that is the arrogance of this man, the sheer arrogance of this man. What it goes to show is we don't give a damn about y'all. Y'all should be kissing our feet. Y'all should be kissing our ass. And if we tell you to do something, you do it. That's really what he's saying. And what's ticking off a lot of these CEOs is that they're pissed that people have said, yeah, I'm good. I'll actually take another job and take less money that actually provides me a better quality of life. I mean, imagine this idea, and I've had this conversation with several friends of mine who've had fathers who worked every day, never missed a day, and they turned 65 or 67 and 68, and then finally retired, and then all of a sudden had different health issues, and they never lived. They died when they were 69 and 70. Who the hell wants to work hard every day, don't take days off, don't take vacation, and you retire and you live for a year or two or three or four, but it's horrible because you got health issues and things along those lines. I think of my dad retiring early from railroad retirement, I guess, 12, 13 years ago. Okay, he's now 76. I can only imagine, first of all, they've done a lot of great things, my mom, a lot of great things in the last 12, 13 years. But imagine you still working and you 70, 72, 74, 75, like a whole bunch of our people. Mm-hmm. And this CEO is like, shut your ass up and get back out in that field. Mm-hmm. That's literally what he's saying. He sounds like a plantation owner, an overseer. And what he wants to do, Niambe, he wants to crack that whip and say, get y'all behinds out there and keep picking that cotton and making me money.
Well, I mean, this is also what happens when you live in a country with no real organized labor movement. I mean, we've moved, inch by inch toward basic worker protections. And then you go to certain states and you still have, right to work states where you can be fired without cause, all of these kinds of things. And I think, when we saw what happened, the protests in France a year or so ago when they were talking about moving up that retirement age, this is what that kind of stuff was about. Because if you die tomorrow, we know that employer will send maybe a nice little plan or a floral arrangement and have your job advertised the next day because it's business as usual. And I think people have recognized, I don't want to work forever, and I'm not going to kill myself for an employer that doesn't care about me. And all these people who are aspirationally wealthy, who think this type of capitalism is the way to go, are going to be sadly mistaken because these kinds of people are very rare. Right? The Tim Gerners of the world who make this kind of money are very rare. And what must you do to make that kind of money? I mean, what he's telling you is you have to be casual about the harm that you inflict on other people while you essentially extort them for their labor for pennies on the dollar so that you can be wealthy. And if you can live with that, then that's good for you. But I think what people are saying is that most of us are not good with it. And workers are saying we are not going to be treated like less than human because we don't have the benefits of the money, of the time, of the investment, and all the other things that we know have helped create CEOs like this and others who aspire to be like them.
Folks, it is absolutely crazy. And again, that's what you're seeing and you're dealing with all across this country as we speak. Niambe, Larry, Mustafa, I appreciate y'all joining me on today's panel. Thank you so very much. Of course, Larry, Mustafa, you see, You see how I got the rep today. So you know how we do it. You know how we do it. You know how we do it. That's how we do it. Alpha's always rule. All right, y'all, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Folks, that's it for us. Do me a favor. When I say needing your support is important, I'm not just sitting here making this up. Understand, and I'm going to be talking about this next week as well, giving you an update on what's happening in the ad industry. And look, they are not supporting black-owned media. Let me tell you something. Next week, it's going to be a whole bunch of corporations throwing receptions and parties and events through Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, AOC. And most of them ain't spending no real money with black-owned media. Oh, but they sure as hell want me to drive by and cover their events. Well, guess what? That camera costs money. That staffer, that videographer costs money. The gas to get to your event costs money. And so so they love free earned media. They love that. They don't like paid media. So your support is critical. We don't have a subscription fee. I chose not to do that because we wanted to make this show accessible to everybody. But your support is critical. I'm not making this up, y'all. Our cost for this show and for the Black Star Network, meaning the other 6 shows, meaning the OTT channel, meaning the equipment, meaning the staff, everything is $195,000 a month. That's what the expenses are. And so if we hit our $1 million goal each year from our fan base, that plays a huge role in us being able to continue doing what we're doing. I don't want to have to put shows on hiatus or cancel shows. But let me be perfectly clear, and I got no problem telling you this here. That's a possibility that I may have to cancel 3 or 4 of those shows to knock off about $80,000 to $90,000 in expenses. And so if the money is not there, it leads to cuts. It's as simple as that. So we don't want to have to do that, but that's a real possibility. And so your support matters. And so please send your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Where you get a copy of my book. That also, those proceeds go back into the show. And so please get a copy of White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. Ben Bella Books, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, Bookshop, Chapters, Books A Million, Target. You can also get the audio version on Audible. And of course, download the Black Star Network app, folks. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. You can also watch our 24-hour, 7-day-a-week streaming channel on Amazon News. Simply go to Amazon Fire and then just go to Amazon News and you can check it out, our continuous program. And of course, you can also tell Alexa, play news from the Black Star Network. In addition to that, you can also, of course, watch us on Plex TV. So our 24-hour streaming channel is on both platforms, Plex TV as well as Amazon News. Folks, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be broadcasting from Chicago. We're going there for McDonald's. They're having, of course, their gospel tour kicking off. We are partnering with them. We're going to be doing a bunch of interviews with all of the different gospel acts. The concert is taking place this Friday in Chicago. It is their first concert, so we look forward to that. So we'll be on the ground doing interviews tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, and Friday, and then of course we'll air some of those interviews right here on the show. And then we'll be airing these interviews over the next several weeks because they are going to be in various cities. And so this is the Inspiration Celebration Gospel Tour. And these are the artists who are going to be on that tour. Go to my iPad, y'all. There we go. So again, it starts in Chicago, the House of Hope, 7 p.m. on Friday. We will be there. Y'all come on by and check us out. All right. I'll see you tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Holla! Folks, Black Star Network is.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?